Have you ever wondered what would happen if a ruthless biker gang tried to seize control of a Las Vegas casino, only to run headfirst into an unassuming but highly trained retired Navy SEAL? In this gripping tale, you'll witness the explosive moment when chaos collides with hidden valor, as an entire establishment is thrown into turmoil by the roar of motorcycles and a hail of shattered glass. The tension escalates rapidly, and just when it seems all is lost, a single individual steps forward to reveal that he is far more than he appears. If you're ready for a riveting journey brimming with suspense, heroic resolve, and unexpected twists, then stay tuned to hear the full account of Bikers Cause Chaos at Las Vegas Casino, but a retired SEAL turns the tables. Remember to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling stories like this, and don't miss a moment of the action. Jacob Sawyer stepped off the bus onto the blazing pavement of the Las Vegas Strip, gazing at the neon skyline with a mixture of curiosity and weariness. The middle-aged man, dressed in a simple checkered shirt and faded jeans, looked nothing like the typical tourist. Instead of lugging around a giant suitcase, he only had a small duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Unknown to almost everyone, within that seemingly unremarkable frame lived the spirit and training of a retired Navy SEAL. Jacob had once been part of the elite who served on classified missions across dangerous corners of the globe. Now he was trying to build a life of quiet routine, far from the memories that haunted him. He had come to Vegas for a temporary gig as a security consultant at a modest casino, the Clearview, located a few blocks away from the flashiest spots on the Strip. Compared to its glitzy neighbors, the Clearview was overshadowed by towering hotels, each blinking with the promise of fortune and excitement. Yet for Jacob, that smaller venue suited him just fine. He preferred a place that rarely grabbed headlines. He longed for a low-key environment where he could earn a living, keep his head down, and not attract attention. The sizzling asphalt under his worn boots reminded him how different the desert heat was compared to the humid jungles he used to navigate. Yet he welcomed the dry scorch of the Nevada sun. It felt more forgiving than the fierce intensity of war zones. The environment offered a subtle sense of comfort, as though he had finally found a corner of the world that demanded nothing more than everyday vigilance. Vegas had its share of rough edges, cheaters, small-time criminals, rowdy visitors, but rarely anything that matched the scale of threats he had once faced abroad. As he approached the Clearview, he noticed the worn carpet inside the main entrance, the subdued decor, and the staff that seemed a little understaffed for a place of that size. Nonetheless, the employees carried on with hopeful smiles. There were no massive fountains or choreographed light shows, just a friendly set of regulars who came to play the slots, and occasionally a table or two of poker. His contact, Mr. Owens, the casino's manager, greeted him with a polite handshake, grateful for the professional assistance. Apparently, there had been rumors of trouble brewing. Nothing was confirmed, but employees had overheard talk of a biker gang prowling the city, sometimes shaking down smaller establishments that couldn't afford top-notch security. Jacob nodded as Mr. Owens explained the situation, quietly taking notes in his mind. He was used to scanning an area for exits, vantage points, or irregularities. That was simply second nature to him after so many years of special operations. But outwardly, he feigned modest interest, wanting to keep any hint of his true background under wraps. For all its glamour, Las Vegas thrived on illusions. Some were extravagant shows on the biggest stages, while others were simple, unspoken secrets lurking in unlit corners. Jacob, standing in the dim glow of the Clearview's entrance, hoped his own secrets would remain locked away. He was a man who had walked through chaos and emerged intact, only to want a fresh start in a place that celebrated fortunes and forgotten yesterdays. Little did he know that in a matter of days, he would be drawn into a scenario that demanded the full range of his skills, a scenario where calm illusions would crumble, replaced by real danger. It didn't take long for Jacob to settle into his new role. By the second day, he had reorganized the security schedule, assigned staff to key checkpoints, and insisted on establishing a better surveillance system around the Clearview's perimeter. Most of the employees simply saw him as an efficient, if somewhat reserved consultant. He didn't offer any stories about his past, and he rarely talked about personal matters. They respected him for his quiet resolve, even if they found him a bit mysterious. When he wasn't fine-tuning security protocols, Jacob would walk the casino floor, exchanging polite nods with card dealers and bartenders. He even practiced a few subtle deception techniques disguised as casual conversation to see if anyone was running a scam. Old habits died hard. He never stopped scanning the crowd, evaluating posture and eye movements the way he once had to identify potential threats in conflict zones. One evening, he overheard two cocktail waitresses whispering about a group of biker thugs rumored to have an interest in controlling certain parts of the city, including smaller casinos. The staff members spoke in hushed, anxious tones. They mentioned the name Steel Serpents with palpable dread. Apparently, the gang had been driving around local bars, intimidating owners into paying for protection. When one bar refused, bottles were smashed and the place was ransacked, leaving the owner too frightened to call the police. Jacob listened carefully but pretended not to pay much attention. He quietly made a mental note to check with Mr. Owens in the morning to see if the rumors held any concrete evidence. In the field, he had learned that half-truths and speculation could escalate quickly if not addressed. And the best way to prepare was to confirm facts, then arrange defenses. Despite the sense of foreboding, the casino carried on as usual. Under the sparkling lights, retirees pressed buttons on slot machines, hopeful for that elusive jackpot. Tourists cheered at the craps table while croupiers calmly supervised. The sweet synthetic scent of circulated air and high-stakes dreams gave the place an atmosphere of perpetual night, where time and reality felt suspended. Yet behind that carefree veneer, tension rippled, if only subtly. Jacob could feel a storm gathering on the horizon. Later that night, as he strolled near the main exit, a thick-set man in a leather vest swung through the doorway. The vest bore a patch shaped like a coiled serpent. Instantly, Jacob's gut stirred. The man's stance, legs slightly apart, shoulders squared, revealed the confidence of someone used to getting his way. The stranger let his gaze slide over the floor, like a predator sizing up potential prey. He finally locked eyes with Jacob, but only for a split second, before giving a dismissive snort and striding toward the nearest blackjack table. Jacob's old instincts kicked in. He recognized that silent communication. "Challenge me if you dare." Without saying a word, the ex-SEAL stepped to the side, blending in with patrons while still maintaining a vigilant watch on the newcomer. The delicate routine of normalcy prevailed for the moment, but in that instant, Jacob sensed that the seeds of conflict were being planted. The Steel Serpents were more than just a rumor, and it was only a matter of time before their presence escalated. The next morning, the streets of Las Vegas welcomed a relentless sun that scorched the sidewalks. Jacob had an early meeting with Mr. Owens and a handful of key staff to review any developments. A couple of security guards mentioned that the same leather-vested man, identified later as Crash, had lingered around the casino until almost dawn, though he didn't cause any visible trouble. They found it suspicious that he seemed to have no real interest in gambling. He barely placed any bets. Instead, he strolled from table to table, observing people and occasionally muttering into his phone. Listening to the guards' accounts, Jacob suspected that Crash was scouting the premises, trying to gauge how strong or weak the casino's defenses were. Back in his military days, he had done similar reconnaissance, albeit with far more discretion. The Steel Serpents, from what little Jacob knew, were not the biggest or flashiest criminal organization in Nevada, but they were ruthless in their domain. They preferred to choose targets that didn't have the backing of large corporate security, establishments like the Clearview, with modest means and smaller budgets. Mr. Owens looked unsettled. He had spent years keeping the casino afloat against the competition of behemoth resorts up the Strip. Now he faced a threat that wasn't about market share, but physical safety. Jacob reassured him calmly. "We'll be prepared. Let's not jump to calling the police just yet. I'll look into the background of these Steel Serpents, see what we're dealing with. Meanwhile, increase staff awareness. If they see anything strange, they should report it immediately." After the meeting, Jacob headed outside, walked around the building's exterior, and examined the parking lot. He mapped out possible places where a biker gang could gather unobserved. He spotted blind spots in the security camera coverage and made mental notes to fix them. Next, he strolled through the neighboring streets looking for any sign of the Steel Serpents. Though Las Vegas was teeming with bikes and custom cars, it didn't take much to notice a few distinctive motorcycles parked close together, emblazoned with that signature serpent emblem. He found them idling near a rundown bar across the block. The place wasn't officially open yet, but three men leaned against their bikes, smoking and chatting in low voices. Jacob recognized Crash among them. He debated confronting them but decided it might be too soon. He didn't have enough intel on the gang's hierarchy or resources. Instead, he stood back, memorizing details. License plates, the color of the snake on their vests, the approximate build of each member. Information was power, and right now, knowledge was the best weapon. Returning to the clear view, he compiled his observations in a small spiral notebook. He also tapped into a few old contacts, former teammates he kept in touch with online. A quick message describing the Steel Serpents was sent out, hoping someone in the security or private investigative world might have run across the gang. Jacob avoided any explicit mention of his location or the name of the casino. He wanted to keep the Clearview's vulnerability off the radar until he was certain of a plan. For the moment, conflict smoldered like a lit fuse. Jacob sensed the tension that preceded overt hostility, a phenomenon he knew all too well from his active duty days. The question wasn't if a confrontation would happen, but when, and he aimed to be ready for that moment when it arrived with full force. As evening set in, the lights of the strip came alive, dressing the desert skyline in a dance of colors. Tourists and locals flocked to theaters, lavish buffets, and slot machines that chimed incessantly. The Clearview, with its more subdued atmosphere, hosted its usual clientele of loyal patrons. Still, a certain edginess hovered beneath the fluorescent glow, especially for those aware of the Steel Serpent's looming presence. Jacob made his rounds, discreetly checking in on the security cameras that he'd repositioned for a better vantage. He took note of any new faces who entered the casino. Every so often, he would spot a figure in a leather vest ride by on a Harley outside, as if testing how closely the Clearview was being watched. Once he noticed Crash strolling along the sidewalk, glancing through the windows like a cat stalking its prey. It was intimidation by repetition, subtle messages that they hadn't forgotten this place or its potential exploitation. Inside, Jacob also picked up on the shifting mood of the staff. Croupiers, waitresses, and bartenders had heard enough rumors to make them uneasy. Conversations halted abruptly whenever they saw a patch of snakeskin or the rumble of a motorcycle in the distance. Mr. Owens tried to be reassuring, but his own nerves showed in the little twitches and forced smiles he offered employees. Without an official police presence or a high-tech security team, the casino felt vulnerable. That night, as Jacob monitored a blackjack table, he saw a tall man in a black cap step up to the dealer with a forced grin. Something about the newcomer set off an alert in Jacob's mind. Perhaps the restless energy in his stance, or the faint look of determination in his eyes. Over the next 20 minutes, the tall man lost every hand he played. Instead of walking away or switching tables, he just kept losing, doubling down on bets that had no logical basis. Jacob recognized this pattern. The man wasn't here to win or enjoy himself. He was waiting, possibly waiting for a signal or an opportunity. He rarely even looked at the dealer, opting instead to scan the crowd. Jacob drifted closer, feigning casual interest in the game. The man cast him a sideways glance, lips curling slightly. When the next hand was dealt, the man brazenly reached over and swiped an extra chip after the cards were on the table. A blatant cheat. The dealer noticed and called him out. A tense argument erupted, culminating in the man grabbing the dealer's wrist aggressively, demanding that he mind his own business. At that moment, Jacob intervened, stepping forward and laying a firm hand on the man's shoulder, calmly but unmistakably forcing him to release the dealer's arm. "Easy," Jacob said, his voice calm but authoritative. The tall man turned, eyes alight with rage. "And who are you supposed to be?" he sneered. "Security," Jacob replied, his fingers digging just enough to communicate control. "Let's keep this civil." For a split second, the man seemed ready to lash out, but he caught a glimpse of something in Jacob's gaze, an unspoken warning that he was more than capable of neutralizing trouble. The man scoffed, snatched up his remaining chips, and stormed off, but not before delivering a quiet threat under his breath. "You'll regret this." Jacob exhaled slowly, aware that each incident piled onto the last, inching closer to a full-scale confrontation. The enemy was testing boundaries, searching for weaknesses. The casino's illusions of safety were now paper-thin, and for Jacob, the countdown toward a violent test of his abilities had begun in earnest. The following day, the Clearview staff found themselves preoccupied with hushed conversations about the altercation at the blackjack table. People speculated about who the tall man might have been and why he left so abruptly after confronting Jacob. Mr. Owens tried to maintain normalcy, offering reassurances that security had things under control, but his unsteady voice betrayed the strain he felt. For a small casino, such a direct challenge was unsettling. Jacob spent the morning systematically adjusting the security setup, making sure cameras covered critical areas, especially entrances and exits. He also walked employees through basic safety procedures, how to respond if a fight broke out, what to do if someone threatened them. Though the staff appreciated the renewed vigilance, it was hard to hide their unease, knowing they could be in the crosshairs of a biker gang known for intimidation tactics. Later that afternoon, Jacob stepped outside to do a quick perimeter check. The sky was clear, offering no relief from the scorching sun. As he rounded the corner, he found two burly men leaning against their motorcycles, parked just off the property. Each wore a leather vest embroidered with the Steel Serpent's emblem. They locked eyes with him, unblinking and challenging, but neither spoke. Jacob nodded politely and continued his inspection, carefully noting their positions and any potential weapons. While they carried no visible firearms, a large hunting knife was strapped to one man's belt. It was a brazen show of force. This was their territory, or so they wanted others to believe. Jacob walked back inside, aware that the confrontation he had been anticipating was inching closer. The bikers clearly aimed to intimidate him into backing off or leaving. But leaving wasn't an option. He had a job to do, and he also felt a growing responsibility to protect the staff who had come to rely on him. Memories of past operations flashed through his mind. Times he had stood as the thin line between civilians and danger, relying on skill and nerve to keep people safe. That evening, one of Jacob's old contacts finally got back to him. Through an encrypted messaging app, he learned that the Steel Serpents had expanded rapidly across the Southwest, targeting hotels, gas stations, and smaller gambling spots, any business lacking the muscle to defend itself. Some chapters even dabbled in drug trafficking, using intimidation to keep witnesses silent. The group's leadership was notoriously tight-lipped, but a name surfaced: Rourke, a shadowy figure rumored to be at the apex of the Serpent's hierarchy. People whispered that Rourke relished breaking any opponent who dared resist. Now Jacob had a better sense of the threat's scale. He wasn't facing a handful of rowdy bikers. He was up against an organized criminal network. Still, he refused to let fear dictate his actions. He reinforced security protocols and placed a call to a friendly local police officer, mentioning suspicious loitering outside the casino. The officer agreed to swing by more often. Though resources were limited, an official action would require concrete evidence of a crime. As nightfall approached, an electric tension filled the air. Patrons tried to enjoy themselves at the tables, but the subtle wariness of the staff was contagious. Hidden behind unassuming eyes, Jacob prepared for a potential clash. The Steel Serpents had arrived, and he knew they wouldn't leave quietly. Soon the facade of civility might shatter altogether, and when it did, a retired SEAL would be ready to greet them with every skill and strategy he had painstakingly honed over a lifetime. The turning point came on a night that started out like any other. Lights flashed across the casino floor, patrons huddled over slot machines, and dealers managed blackjack and poker tables with professional smiles. Jacob circulated through the building, scanning corners and memorizing faces as always. The tension was there, just beneath the surface. But hour by hour, no major incidents occurred, until a thunderous roar of motorcycles broke the thin veneer of calm. Around 10 bikes pulled up to the curb outside the Clearview. Engines revved loudly, echoing off the nearby buildings. The riders dismounted as a group, forming a row of menacing leather and metal under the glowing streetlights. Passers-by edged away. Some onlookers took out phones to record video, not quite sure if this was a harmless spectacle or something darker. Jacob, watching from a window, felt the unmistakable prickle of anticipation. He quietly called the front desk and told them to lock the doors leading to the staff-only areas. Then he proceeded toward the casino's main entrance. When he stepped outside, the display was as brazen as it was intimidating. A muscular figure dismounted from the biggest motorcycle, a sleek black machine with custom chrome detailing. The man removed his helmet, revealing a shaved head and a grin that did not reach his cold eyes. "I'm looking for the one in charge," he announced in a voice that boomed over the rumble of still idling engines. Jacob calmly approached. "You're on private property," he said, standing tall. "If you have business here, you should go through the proper channels." The leader smirked, tilting his head. "I'm Rourke," he said, stepping closer, "and you must be the so-called security everyone's been talking about." He scanned Jacob as if assessing an opponent in a ring. "We're here to discuss certain arrangements with the management." Behind Rourke, the other bikers fanned out, forming a semicircle. Jacob could see weapons attached to a few belts, knives, maybe a handgun, or two concealed under jackets. The tension was almost tangible, yet Jacob's demeanor remained measured, calm. "This establishment isn't interested in your arrangements. Move along." Several of the bikers chuckled. Rourke's grin vanished, replaced by a hardened stare. "You see, I don't take kindly to folks who think they can brush us off," he sneered, "especially not some low-level security guard." In that moment, Mr. Owens appeared at the doorway, face pale but resolved. He stood behind Jacob, attempting to project confidence. "We told you before," Mr. Owens said, voice trembling slightly. "We're not paying for any so-called protection. We have legal means." Rourke raised a hand, cutting him off. "You had your chance to deal quietly. Now you want to do it the hard way?" He snapped his fingers, and one of his lieutenants threw a heavy chain onto the ground, letting it clang ominously. "We'll take what we want," Rourke continued, "starting with a little demonstration inside your casino, just to show we can." Every nerve in Jacob's body stood on edge. "That's enough," he said quietly, stepping forward. He didn't raise his voice or show anger, but the steel in his tone was undeniable. Rourke's eyes flickered with something between curiosity and contempt. "Or what?" the biker leader challenged, stepping within inches of Jacob's face. Jacob's mind sped through possible outcomes. He was outnumbered, but he had an entire building full of innocent people to protect. "Then I'll have to make you leave," he said simply. The dryness in his throat vanished as adrenaline took over. Tensions had finally reached a breaking point. The swirling confrontation that had been brewing was about to erupt in earnest. With a single nod from Rourke, chaos erupted. The bikers surged forward, intent on forcing their way into the casino. Jacob blocked the leader's path with a swift shift of his body, and in an instant, the retired SEAL's training kicked into high gear. He seized Rourke's arm, aiming to incapacitate him quickly, but two other bikers lunged to assist their boss. Behind Jacob, Mr. Owens retreated into the lobby, frantically shouting for security to call the police. The door rattled as more of the steel serpents tried to push inside. Patrons gasped and ducked behind slot machines, while dealers hurried to secure gaming tables and chips. The air filled with the tremor of fear. Jacob was fully engaged in a brutal scramble. He parried a punch from one biker, then spun to land an elbow strike on another who tried to grab him from behind. Each move was precise, practiced, a language of violence he'd hoped to never speak again in civilian life. Rourke swung a vicious right hook, but Jacob evaded, countering with a knee to the midsection that knocked the biker leader back a step. Yet the enemy numbers were daunting. Even with superior skill, Jacob couldn't engage them all at once. Within moments, a few bikers had slipped past him, storming into the lobby where frightened customers screamed. Fortunately, the interior security guards, alerted by Jacob's earlier precautions, jumped into action. They weren't SEAL-trained, but they had the advantage of surprise and a strong desire to defend their workplace. Someone triggered a silent alarm, ensuring that law enforcement would be on the way, though how quickly they'd arrive was anyone's guess in a city as busy as Las Vegas. Outside, Jacob felt a surge of relief when a figure materialized at his side. It was Hank, a robust, middle-aged guard who'd previously served in the Marines. Hank drove his shoulder into a biker, aiming to tackle Jacob. They exchanged a quick nod, acknowledging a shared background in the military. Working in tandem, the two men began to drive back the wave of leather and fury. One by one, bikers tumbled to the ground or staggered away, nursing injuries from well-placed strikes. Yet the fight was far from over. Rourke roared in frustration, his voice carrying over the noise. He barked orders for his men to regroup. Some retreated temporarily, forming a line that blocked the sidewalk. They threatened bystanders who dared approach. The bystanders, in turn, scattered or continued filming from a distance, unsure whether they were about to witness a violent catastrophe. Inside the casino, chairs were overturned and chips lay scattered across tables. A couple of bikers smashed a row of slot machines with their chains, sending sparks flying. Security guards, outnumbered though they were, managed to corral them into a corner near the bar, preventing them from doing further damage. Still, every second felt precarious. The tension was a hair's breadth away from an even deadlier escalation. Jacob wiped sweat from his brow, scanning the scene. Even though the tide momentarily seemed in their favor, he knew that if the steel serpents drew firearms, the situation would turn fatal in a heartbeat. He locked eyes with Rourke again, who was breathing heavily and seething with rage. Jacob sensed that the man wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by a figure who appeared so unassuming, but the confrontation had only just begun. The question of whether the police would arrive in time, or if the violence would escalate beyond control, hung in the hot night air like a thundercloud ready to burst. Amid the snarls and shouts echoing through the parking lot and lobby, Jacob's mind raced with tactical calculations. His primary objective, safeguard the people inside the casino. Secondary, limit the destructive rampage of the bikers until law enforcement could arrive. Tertiary, maintain control of the situation with the few resources he had on hand. Memories of small unit tactics in foreign war zones flashed through his mind. He recalled how crucial it was to isolate threats and ensure no hidden flanks. He signaled Hank to secure the lobby door. Together, they formed a bottleneck by dragging a heavy roulette table in front of the main entrance, heavy enough to deter immediate forced entry. Still, the steel serpents outside regrouped near their motorcycles, obviously debating their next move. Inside, two of the bikers who had been trapped by the guards near the bar were now subdued, hands zip-tied behind their backs. Jacob barked orders to the staff to evacuate patrons through a side entrance that led to a service alley. A few bolder customers initially refused to leave, wanting to hold on to their winnings or continue filming, but the evident threat eventually convinced them to clear out. Some guests kept their phones raised, capturing footage of the battered slot machines and the trembling staff. Such videos would likely spread online in minutes, but that was the least of the Clearview's worries at the moment. Outside, Rourke paced back and forth, cursing and barking into his phone. Jacob suspected he might be calling for reinforcements or orchestrating another angle of attack. The tension thickened. Hank, pressed against a barricade inside, muttered, "We can't hold him off forever." Jacob nodded, well aware of the risk. If more bikers arrived, the situation would become untenable. The police needed to get there fast. Suddenly, the roaring engines flared to life again. Jacob looked through a crack in the makeshift barricade. The steel serpents were mounting up, but instead of leaving, they revved in unison, creating a wall of sound that made the windows rattle. Rourke spat on the ground. Then, with an almost theatrical flourish, he lifted a sawed-off shotgun from a saddlebag on his bike, brandishing it in the air. Jacob's heart sank. Firearms were now officially in play. Gunfire in a crowded casino could lead to unthinkable casualties. He signaled everyone inside to get down, flattening themselves behind tables and counters. Adrenaline pulsed through him as he felt the familiar readiness of combat. He crouched near the barricade, trying to spot potential vantage points to intercept Rourke if he tried to force his way in with that shotgun. Through the glass doors, Rourke glared at Jacob, as though addressing him personally. "You think you can stop us? This place belongs to us now," he shouted, raising the weapon. A hush fell over the interior, broken only by the hum of cooling fans and the distant wail of a police siren, still too far off to be of immediate help. For Jacob, the moment crystallized. He'd lived through high-stakes standoffs before, but this time, the battleground was a casino, and the people he was protecting were civilians who had never envisioned themselves caught in such a nightmare. In the back of his mind, he remembered the oath he'd once sworn to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Retired or not, that oath felt as sacred now as it did on the day he completed SEAL training. As Rourke leveled the shotgun toward the doors, Jacob's body tensed, ready to spring into action. Every muscle coiled, every sense tuned to the next fraction of a second. One wrong move could mean tragedy, but he was not about to let the steel serpents run unchecked. Time seemed to warp as Rourke raised the shotgun. Jacob braced, angling his body behind the reinforced portion of the barricade. The muzzle flashed, discharging a deafening blast that shattered part of the glass doorway and lodged pellets into the roulette table. Splinters of wood and shards of glass sprayed the area, causing staff and security to duck for cover. Despite the chaos, Jacob recognized that the first shot was likely a warning, aimed more at intimidation than accuracy. But there was no guarantee the next one wouldn't be lethal. In the haze of debris, Jacob leapt up, capitalizing on the pause before Rourke could pump another round. He sprinted out from behind the barricade, aiming to intercept. His ex-SEAL reflexes clicked into overdrive as he closed the distance. Rourke's eyes widened with surprise. He hadn't expected anyone to charge head-on. Jacob crashed into him with controlled force, deflecting the barrel upward. A second blast erupted into the night sky, harmlessly scattering shot across the neon-lit street. They tumbled onto the hot pavement. Jacob gripped Rourke's wrist, trying to wrench the shotgun away, but the biker leader was stronger than anticipated. Veins bulged in Rourke's forearm as he fought to maintain control of the weapon. Other bikers swarmed toward them, but a sudden eruption of sirens and flashing lights froze them in place. The cavalry had arrived, 2 patrol cars screeched to a halt, blue and red beams dancing across the scene. Yet the fight between Jacob and Rourke took center stage. Grappling for advantage, they rolled on the asphalt, each straining to dominate the other. Jacob's training allowed him to focus on technique, twisting Rourke's arm at the joint to weaken his grip. Eventually, with a violent yank, the shotgun clattered to the ground. Jacob hurled it aside, out of Rourke's immediate reach. Rourke roared in defiance and threw a wild punch at Jacob's face, just grazing his cheek. Blood trickled from Jacob's lip, but he barely registered the sting. He shifted his weight, pinned Rourke's arm behind his back, and forced him face first against the pavement. Officers rushed in, guns drawn, shouting orders for everyone to stand down. Adrenaline still coursed through Jacob's body as he glanced around. The other bikers, seeing the police and the subdued state of their leader, began to throw down their weapons. 2 tried to mount their bikes to flee, but more sirens signaled reinforcements blocking the exit. Under the swirl of flashing lights, the steel serpents found themselves surrounded. Jacob kept a knee pressed firmly into Rourke's back, ensuring he couldn't escape or reach a concealed weapon. One of the officers, a sergeant named Alvarez, who Jacob had briefly spoken to earlier about suspicious activity, approached, weapon trained. "Good job, sir. We'll take it from here," Alvarez said, signaling 2 more officers to cuff Rourke. Jacob relinquished his hold, stepping aside to catch his breath. Inside the clear view, the immediate crisis was over, though the damage was extensive. Tables were overturned, machines smashed, and the staff were visibly shaken. People peered from behind counters and inside restrooms where they had taken refuge. Slowly, employees emerged, relieved to see the situation finally under control. The scattered bikers were corralled by the police, weapons confiscated and wrists bound. For a moment, Jacob simply stood there, breathing heavily under the desert sky lit by neon and sirens, the strong scent of gunpowder lingering in the air. He felt the throbbing bruise on his cheek, each pulse reminding him of the seriousness of what had just happened. But the victory was clear. The clear view was safe, and Rourke's intimidation tactics had failed, undone by the determination of a retired SEAL who refused to allow civilian lives to be endangered. In the days that followed, the aftermath of the biker assault rippled through Las Vegas media. Headlines told of a ferocious showdown at a modest casino, describing how a band of bikers called the Steel Serpents tried to strong-arm their way in, only to be thwarted by the timely arrival of law enforcement, and, as some outlets reported, the heroics of an unnamed security consultant. Viral videos captured portions of the chaos, though the camera angles made it hard to fully convey how close the situation had come to outright catastrophe. The Clearview was closed for repairs for a short while. Insurance adjusters visited to assess the broken machines, shattered glass, and bullet-riddled furniture. Employees returned to help clean up, united by a renewed sense of camaraderie. Mr. Owens, although shaken, was grateful to see everyone emerge largely unscathed. He openly praised Jacob, but the ex-SEAL remained characteristically reserved, insisting he'd only done what was necessary. Still, word of Jacob's actions spread. Staff whispered about the retired soldier, exchanging rumors of special operations experience and feats that belonged more in an action movie than a quiet casino. Jacob mostly brushed off the attention, politely changing the subject whenever people pressed for details. The headlines might move on quickly in a city as fast-paced as Vegas, but the memory of the conflict lingered for him. He had returned to a role he never thought he'd need again, harnessing the same lethal expertise that once defined his life. A week later, the Clearview reopened, its new security measures in place, most of them recommended by Jacob. The floors were polished and brand new slot machines replaced the damaged ones. Curious guests showed up, lured by the real-life drama they'd read about, turning the Clearview into a local hotspot for a time. While Mr. Owens recognized the irony of tragedy becoming free publicity, he didn't complain. The extra revenue would help offset repair costs. Police investigations discovered that the Steel Serpents chapter, led by Rourke, was part of a broader network. The arrests at the Clearview led authorities to various caches of illegal weapons in contraband across Nevada. Though the gang wasn't completely dismantled, they were dealt a significant blow, and additional arrests followed in the weeks after. For Jacob, the experience reaffirmed a truth he had tried to bury. The world was never short on bullies and predators, and sometimes stepping up was the only way to protect the innocent. And though he yearned for a peaceful life, he accepted that he couldn't simply discard the skills he'd earned in uniform. He might not seek out conflict, but if danger came knocking, he wouldn't stand aside. During a small gathering to celebrate the casino's reopening, Mr. Owens raised a toast to Jacob, calling him the man who saved the Clearview. Jacob bowed his head modestly, mumbled a few words of thanks, and then stepped away from the spotlight. Outside the casino doors, he inhaled the warm desert air and scanned the horizon. Vegas's neon brilliance glittered on the skyline, a perpetual symbol of hope, risk, and transformation. Far off in the distance, the faint rumble of engines and the city's bustle blended into a singular hum. For now, at least, peace had returned. Jacob Sawyer, the so-called ordinary security consultant, had once again proven that underestimating a quiet professional was a gambler's worst bet. Life at the Clearview, though forever changed, resumed a semblance of normalcy, lit by neon signs and the unwavering determination of its staff. Yet a question hung silently in the air. Would other threats arise hearing rumors of how a biker gang was thwarted on the Strip? Perhaps. But if they did, they would discover the same hard truth, that hidden behind an unassuming demeanor lay the formidable resolve of a retired SEAL ready to turn the tables on anyone who brought chaos to his doorstep. Looking back on the events at the Clearview Casino, it's incredible to see how courage, loyalty, and sheer determination triumphed over intimidation and violence. Our retired SEAL, Jacob, showed us that true heroes often wear no cape or medal. They simply act when the moment calls for it. Despite facing overwhelming odds, he protected innocent people and proved that hope can shine brightest amidst chaos. From stopping a rogue biker gang to preventing countless bystanders from becoming victims, this story reminds us that ordinary places can become battlegrounds for extraordinary heroism. In the end, the Clearview found renewed confidence, and the city of Las Vegas gained one more legend in its ever-glittering history. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Jacob made the right choice charging at the gang leader? Share your opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you for reading, and we look forward to bringing you more compelling stories soon.